Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This video, I want to share about any tutorial about Awaken Witch. I'm sorry, Polly.
Hello, welcome to my trash channel. Today we're gonna be doing an Awakening Witch PvE guide. Today we're gonna be doing an Awakening Witch PvP guide in 2025. Let's get started. Alright, let's start with mobility. So we have 4 mobility skills. We have the teleport, the advanced teleport, the elementalization, and magical evasion. So the magical evasion is not spammable. If you spam it, you will lose the iframe on the second one, and this is a gap. Avoid using it more than once in a row. Awakening Witch does not have the split teleport, so you're gonna have to decide whether to only teleport once or teleport twice. You are not able to use the second teleport once you use the first teleport. For elementalization, it is a shorter range backwards teleport, and it turns into a super armor at the end. So if you're not careful, you can get grabbed out of this. Okay, so now let's talk about the pre-buffs. So the most important pre-buff that you want for your Awakening Witch is the Q block. The Q block is a front guard that gives you 30 damage reduction for 10 seconds. Now this is a very important buff to have, especially when you're going to be diving a huge ball of enemies. The 30 DR comes in clutch and it really helps your survivability. So the next, it's your SRMB. The SRMB is an 18% critical hit rate. 18% crit hit rate is really useful when you're trying to maximize the damage that you do to the enemy before you dip out. So this is really good if you're about to engage the enemy or you're about to dive a ball. You just pre-pop it and then you go into that, throw your super armor rotation, and then you just dip out. So the next, we're going to be talking about speed spell. Speed spell is important because it gives you your 20% movement and casting speed. You want to have your speed spell up before you engage the enemy for an even better casting speed upon entry. You can also use your speed spell to pop your magical shield rather. You can use your speed spell to quickly access your magical shield from awakening state. You don't have to C-swap to your pre-awakening, so you can just go speed spell and then hit Q quickly, and you go straight back to awakening right after that. You also want to make sure that you pop an E-buff before you go in. Your E-buff, the Psyche of Adspera, it is a casting speed, critical hit rate, AP, accuracy, evasion, DR. You want to pop this before you enter the battle because it gives you a lot of extra stats to work with. Debuff is also good for team fights because you give your defensive stats to your allies. And of course, you're gonna want to pop your Z buff as well if you want to go for pure damage. I would also consider using the 100% BSR from time to time, especially if the enemy does not have grabbers in their side. Or if it's a 1v1 and you're not fighting a grab class, you can just use your 100% Fissure Wave. It becomes a super armor instead of a front guard. It becomes a long casting super armor, so it's fairly good for trading, super armor trading, and it does wound the enemy. Let's move on to your common catches. So for the most common catch of Awakening Witch, this is the TP into a Shift F. So that's like a shift space for the teleport into a Shift F Voltaic. Now that is a 360 bound and stiff. Now you won't be hitting the stiff if your pet isn't out. TLDR, you need to have your pet out every single time. Your next CC would be Fissure or Yoke. Those two are front guards, so they're a bit risky to use, but they're definitely good if the enemy is not good at punishing front guards. So they're not a fast class, or they're not able to go behind you quickly. They don't have skills that go through front guards. So for example, you got your Fissure, which is SLMB RMB, or which is a knockdown. Always good to have a knockdown. Or you can go for Yoke, which is Shift RMB. This is a knockback that goes into a knockdown, and then you can re-CC them with another knockdown for maximum CC time. Now, your other choice here would be Detonative Flow, which is WF. But the problem with this one, it's unprotected, it's only a float, so they get up really fast, and it's a bit hard to catch enemies off guard with this one. There are also cheeky catches such as the Meteor, so you can pop your Sage Memory and then drop a Meteor on them for a stiff into a knockdown. You can go in and then follow up with another knockdown, throw your DPS combo. but it's a bit harder since you have to wait for the Sage Memory to even be available. If you do have your core Thunderstorm, you can use that as an additional catch. It is a stun, so it's a pretty decent long duration CC if that's what you're into. Okay, let's now talk about the important hotkeys. Now, I would recommend that you have your speed spell in your hotkeys because you can quickly cast Magical Shield from Awakening. Your Sage Memory, this is handy for quick casting PA. If you have Sage Memory and then you hit Shift Q, your PA will cast. Next, I recommend having your healing spells, your Healing Aura, your Healing Lighthouse. Your Healing Aura at your Awakening is a quick, cheeky heal. So, for example, your health is reduced, you just teleport away from your enemy, you pop a Healing Aura, you Q block, you should have regained 1400 HP just like that. As much as possible, you want to go for hit and run tactics. If you do not get the catch, you do not get the knockdown, cut your losses and move away unless you outgear the enemy. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the other hotkey heal, which is your Healing Lighthouse. The Healing Lighthouse will heal yourself and your allies, 1500 for yourself, 1000 HP for your allies. This pops 3 times, it is unprotected, it is really good for team fights. I would rarely use this during 1v1s because it's a huge gap and the enemy can easily catch up to you and CC you. So this does get you out of your awakening state. You can use your WF to quickly swap back into your awakening state. The only C swap I would recommend from pre-awakening to awakening is SC, which is a teleport into a C swap to awakening. You can also use the WC C swap, which is more protected, but it doesn't really give you that catch that WF gives. So pick your poison. WF is a good floating catch if you can catch the enemy without a super armor. WC C swap, which is a front guard, or you can go for SC, which is a teleport. Next important hotkey skill, you should have your mass teleport. This teleport can pretty much be your secondary V. It's like a V, but you can't really move once it starts casting. There is a way where you can quickly move your camera in the last minute. So like you can move your camera in the last minute. You can cast the animation here and then you can move your camera to another direction. That is a good way of getting your enemy to leave you alone or lose track of you. But it is a pretty good panic button. Keep it here. That's pretty much it for the important hotkey skills. Now let's talk about Rabams. So for the skill enhancement, you can go for Sage Light, which is a quick emergency heal. Or you can go for Sage Thunder, which is a quick stun. But it is unprotected, so I would rather just go for the quick heal. This is really helpful when you get out-traded and you need to quickly regain your HP for another dive. The Swift Earthquake is what I would recommend since it's super armor, it's protected, and it's a quick swap to your pre-awakening state if you ever need it. You can then follow that up with a teleport swap, get back into awakening. You're 100% protected while doing that, and I would recommend using that if you run out of super armors and you still need to keep trading since you do not have your mobilities on cooldown yet. The next is your preference. You could go for Lightning Arrows. It's a long range spell, or Mana Arrows, which is a front guard. I don't use either of these. Go for whichever you prefer. After that, let's talk about the basic combo, the basic dive combo. So you're going to be using the basic dive combos for pretty much any group fight. The idea is you go in, you deal damage, try to get those catches, which is a great CC bot. So if you want to help your teammates just score some kills, you can just teleport into the enemy. So for the dive combo, you can go for shift space, teleport for as long of a distance as you need, and then you go shift F, Voltake into a shift Q. So you teleport in, shift F into a shift Q, into an SF Thunderstorm, and then you can back off for a bit. You can throw a barrage, and then you can safely exit out. Try to make sure that if you are gonna throw a barrage of lightning, there is no one behind you, because barrage of lightning or WRMB This is a super armor that turns into a front guard. So if there is someone behind you, you're gonna get caught. You're gonna get CC'd and you're most definitely gonna die. So let's try that again. You go shift space, hold space, shift F, shift Q, into an SF, into elementalization, magical evasion, you can linger the super armor and teleport out. That is your basic dive combo. Now, if you want to make the enemy stay on the ground for longer, for example, you catch a lot of enemies and there are no enemies behind you, you can go for a Fissure Wave knockdown, or you can go for a yoke knockdown. Either way, both options are great. I would just go for the Fissure Wave because it's easy to cancel out of. You don't have to commit. So you can go for the teleport. For example, there are no enemies. You can go for a Fissure Wave to extend the time they're on the ground. Throw a barrage. Maybe you get the down smash. Dip out. No muss, no fuss. You're out of the frying pan just like that. Now let's talk about combos. Awakening Witch doesn't have a set combo. There is more of a priority for your combos. So, for example, as soon as you catch someone, so your catches are gonna be, of course, you get Shift F, which is Voltake, you get your WF, which is Detonative Flow, right? And then you can also catch with Fissure, you can catch with a Yoke. Either way, as soon as you catch someone, you're always gonna want to have one knockdown skill. So your knockdown skills are Fissure Wave, which is SLMB RMB, or Yoke of Ordeal, Shift, RMB, Hold. Always reserve one of those two skills. What I like to do when engaging, so what I like to do is fish for CCs with a Voltake or a Detonative Flow. So for example, you catch someone with Detonative, you can throw a Toxic Flood. Now the Toxic Flood, this gives the enemy a minus magic DP debuff of 20, I believe, 20, and then it's a poison damage. So this is generally good to pop. You can either pop it from afar before engaging, so you can pop E, and then you go in, you engage. If you catch, you can DPS, and then throw some damage, and then you dip out, just like that. Or you can also just incorporate it to your combo. So for example, as soon as you're inside, you get the catch. For example, you get the catch, throw your Toxic Flood, do your secondary knockdown, and then you dip out. Now your down smashes are limited. You only have your Shift Q and then your WRMB. So you only have Thorns of Denial, and Barrage of Lightning for down smash. You want to save those for down smash, but Barrage is also a pretty good way to finish off opponents if they're running away or they're already low. So you can also do WRMB to catch them while they're running away. I would not recommend that you use your WRMB as a long range poke because you can get better mileage out of it by just using it as a down smash or as an execution. So for your priority, you want to be using your minor catches, Thunderstorm, SF, WS Detonative, and your Shift F Voltake. Those are your minor priority catches. So these catches are not knockdown. Now the Thunderstorm only works if you have Core Thunderstorm. So you can choose to use Core Thunderstorm if you want to catch with that, or Voltake as well. You always want to reserve your knockdowns for a re-CC. There are chances where you get a Yoke catch, which is a knockback, and then you have time, you get time to DPS, and then you follow up with a Fissure Wave, and then you get even more time to DPS, and then if you get the down smash, you can try to get another down smash, but that's very hard. It's a really low chance to down smash. This class is not good for down smashing. So I would just recommend you cut your losses as soon as you throw damage and the enemy is not dead. Reposition. Always look at your movement skills. Make sure you have an escape. You can engage with teleport, which is what most people do. You can engage with teleport, but it's a bit hard to get out of a situation once you are out of teleports. Teleport is the easiest way to get out of a fight. So what I would recommend for engaging is you can do a magical evasion into elementalization, and then you pop your damage combo. At least you'd still have your teleports to get out of there safely. Once you are out of mobility, pop a speed spell, throw your weapon, and run away. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for your mobility and escaping. Just pray that you're not fighting a Musa, a Zerker, or anything that has a fast dash that can outrun you. Alright, so now let's talk about cores. So you have 4 cores. You got Fissure Wave, Detonative, Equilibrium, and Thunderstorm. Now, the Equilibrium break is not really viable for me because it is a front guard, it casts slow, and it only gives you stiffness and bound. So it's a slow CC that ends with a bound, and you have your back exposed to anyone or anything that can CC you for this duration of time. So I would not recommend using Equilibrium. What I do recommend using are Thunderstorm, Detonative Flow, and Fissure Wave. Now Fissure Wave is usually my bread and butter since it's such a low cooldown and high damage skill, so you can just keep spamming it while trading. Now Detonative is also good if you're fighting classes that have gaps but they are long range. For example, you have a Megu or a Succession Megu. You can catch a Succession Megu from afar as an Awakening Dosa, or you're fighting a Ranger, or you're maybe fighting an Archer, right? Sometimes those classes do have gaps, so if you have a protected front guard long range float, you can go try to catch those gaps, and then you follow up with a knockdown, and then for the most part, since they are squishy classes, you can probably get kills that way. The next is Thunderstorm. Now Thunderstorm is really good if you like super armor trading and you like diving balls. So if you're gonna be diving the ball, I would suggest using Thunderstorm. Secondary AoE CC that you can throw at the enemy. So for example, you can go for Voltake, and then if they don't get hit by the Voltake, they don't go down with the Voltake, you can pop the Thunderstorm for the stun. Now this gives you even more chances of CCing the enemy, so your teammates can hopefully get some kills. For the add-ons, these are the add-ons I would be personally running. I believe that the Witch is mostly a freestyle class, and whichever suits you for your use case should be used for this. These add-ons are what I prefer to use for the class, and you are free to use your own. Some people use Bleed. I personally like gambling with my down smash on Barrage. You can even add down smash to your Thorns. SA trading with Awakening Witch is not that good. It is a hit and run situation. But the thing with Awakening Witch, if you outgear the enemy, you can just gear check them. Provided they don't have a grab, you can gear check them by holding your SA Linger before popping the next one. So you can do Shift F into a Linger, into a Shift Q, into a Linger, into an SF, into a Linger. You can Magical Evade, and it lingers a bit. As you can see, you have a lot of lingers. So by the time you finish that rotation, you're gonna have another Voltake ready to pop. Alright, so for summons, I would suggest using Gore, so you have a chance of not getting hit by the enemy's skills, especially if they're ranged, because the skills will be auto-targeted to Gore instead of you. So that's why I would recommend using Gore. The buffs that you get from having your summons out are the same for either summon, so at the end of the day, I believe that Gore is the better choice when it comes to PvP. Fight me. Alright, now let's talk about some tips and tricks for Awakening Witch. So we already talked about earlier, you can use your speed spell to quickly cast your magical shield from Awakening. You can use your Sage Memory to quickly cast PA from Awakening. So you go Sage Memory into PA. But the problem with that is you will end up with your main hand stance. So you're gonna want to swap back into your Awakening state afterwards. You can back evade to quick cast. You can see you have your magical evasion to the left, to the right, forwards, and backwards. Now, for the left side and right side evasions, they usually are not cancelable. As you can see, you cannot cancel your animation. You cannot cancel into anything. It's difficult to do anything while dodging left to right. So I wouldn't recommend dodging left to right if you're using your magical evasion. Instead, I suggest you dodge backwards. If you dodge backwards, you can cancel your abilities midway and quick cast. So for example, you can do backwards magical evasion into a fissure wave. So for example, you can see that you can quickly cancel it, you can quickly cancel the animation. So these three are cancelable. You get the fissure wave, the thunderstorm, and your lightning blast. You can use it on some situations. For example, you want to go behind the enemy and quickly cast the catch. So if you do this and you cast fissure, the enemy has more time to react. But if you go backwards magical evasion into a fissure, it casts faster and the enemy has less time to react. So it's like elementalization into a fissure, but it's faster. So I would always recommend, if you're gonna be doing magical evasion, so you can just cancel it and then quick cast whatever spell that you want. It's a really good way. It's a really good way of moving around while still casting spells and kiting the enemy. If you pop Voltaic and Thorns together, the animation for Thorns becomes way faster than how it would be if you just casted it by itself. So we can compare it right now. I casted Voltaic and Thorns, and now I'm just gonna cast Thorns. So if you just cast Thorns, it's gonna be a lot slower. Alright, so next is your Toxic Flood. So Toxic Flood takes a small amount of time to cast. So if you hit E, there is a cast animation before it pops your flood. Now that small gap while casting can get you caught by the enemy CC. So what can you do about that? Well, you can just move around and press E. It cancels the casting animation. So for example, the enemy ball is right there and you're trying to debuff them preemptively. They're gonna be moving towards you any second now. So you just start moving around and you pop your E, and then go straight to protection or go straight to attacking the enemy. Anyone that steps on this will get their DP debuffed. They're gonna get poisoned, so it's essentially your kill zone. You put up your E and you start throwing damage at your E. As so. And then you just dip out. You dip out and then disengage. Wait for the next chance to dive. And lastly, for tips and tricks, you can use your Sage. You can use your Sage memory to quickly cast a meteor shower to catch an enemy from afar. So, for example, you can put your camera up. You can hit this distance by putting your camera up. Pop your Sage memory, and then you pop your meteor. You can hit this guy from there. You get the catch. Usually it goes from catch to knockdown, but I didn't do the full animation. But it is a pretty good cheeky knockdown from afar, and if the enemy does not expect it, as most people will just assume that Awakening Witch is a mid-range caster. Yes, you are a mid-range caster, unless you pull out the meteor. The meteor is your longest range CC, but it needs the Sage memory to even be viable. If you cast your meteor without Sage memory, you're gonna have a lot of problems. You have a huge casting time delay, so you can get hit by anything around you, get CC'd, get grabbed. So as you can see, we go straight in and re-knock down the enemy. Tried to go for the down smash there. And then if you get the down smash, you do get a reset combo. And then you back off. So that's pretty much it for basic tips and tricks on Awakening Witch.